son, where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is once again the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. And, today is going to be very interesting. We're going to get into a lot of, we were just talking before, but we're going to get into some fine print. Many of you might be familiar with the Constitution of the United States, and some of you may even be familiar with the First Amendment and the rights that it offers to us as American citizens. But do you know all five of those rights? There's the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, the freedom of press, the freedom of assembly, and the right to petition. Now, if you don't recognize that last one, then today is your day, because our guest is an expert on the subject. He's a former captain in the U.S. Army and a lifelong educator who's been involved in political action ever since Vietnam. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kirk Beck.
Hey, wonderful to be here.
A rousing round of applause for you.
I love that.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I'm looking forward to this exchange of ideas.
You know, when I came across your profile and your stuff, it was really interesting. And again, before, as we were talking, my life has kind of led me to be more involved and aware of legality and legalese than I was ever anticipating. But I'm happy that it did, because I've learned so much. And what I think you can really offer my audience here is just maybe a little more of a firm understanding of the things we have the tools that we have at our disposal, the rights that we have, and how to reasonably use them, as every American should be aware, at least aware of the options to them. So I guess just for my audience, could you just give yourself a quick introduction of what you do now, and then I figure we'll take it all the way back even before you get into the military and take it from there.
Very good. At the beginning, I want to say to the audience, the people that are here till the end, I have a free gift that I want to give to the listeners. It will be very helpful to you. Now, as to me, I was reared in South Dakota, and I went to school at South Dakota School of Mines and got an engineering degree. And because the Vietnam War was going on at that time, I got a deferment. I went into ROTC, and at the graduated in 1972. We were going through the Vietnamization of the war. As a second lieutenant, you couldn't even go into the military active duty. They were releasing second lieutenants faster than they were coming in.
Interesting.
So I was able to skirt the war for 5 years. So when I hear people, they want to say thank you for your service, if they've got a few minutes, I always try to say, I'd like to explain to you my service and how unfortunate it was not a very profitable experience for the American people or me. That's not why I'm here to talk today. But I've always been very curious, and I moved to Colorado, worked for Shell Oil Company, and one morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, I was traveling home, and a police officer stopped me. 2 o'clock in the morning, I went, what in the world's going on here? And he wanted to give me a ticket for a rolling stop, 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, I have to admit to this audience, as I always do, that I'm a recidivist when it comes to rolling stops. I simply can't stop. I can't stop stopping, or whatever. Basically, that was the beginning, because I think there's nobody here. Nobody cares what I'm doing. And I didn't go through it fast at all. I mean, I slowed way down, looked both ways, and then I went through. And then I began to think also about where's the money going? But like most Americans, I just kind of put it aside. And I lived in Colorado peacefully for 12 years. I didn't get another ticket to my recollection. I don't remember getting another ticket while I lived in Colorado after that first one. But I eventually found my way to California. Now, California, it's easier to get almost everything. Tickets, fines, regulations, it's just... But I have lived out here for 36 years, and I've only gotten 5 rolling stops, so it's not bad.
It's pretty good, on average. Pretty good.
The last one was in 2018, so I'm at 6. I should be getting one soon. I don't think I'll get another one. Because what happened to me was that I've been impaneled on juries a couple of times. And I never get one where there's an obvious victim. I'm always there where there's no victim. So I have a tendency to ask a few questions and then the judge will tell me I can leave. That's a good way to get off a jury. Just start asking questions.
Right.
But I did find myself on a jury trial. It was very unusual. And I was sitting right behind the defendant. And the defendant said something, and the judge cut him off. Now, I've since met this judge in other places, and he's a very mellow guy. But he was very abrupt and very impatient with the defendant, scolded him in front of all 60 jurors, potential jurors. And his words were this: "Sir, you had a chance to have an attorney. You chose not to have an attorney. Therefore, you'll have to know every aspect of the law. You are responsible." Now, I kind of knew that was wrong right there. Judges are actually supposed to be assistant, kind of like helping the pro per with some of the problems, just to move the case along faster.
Sure.
But he wasn't going to give this guy anything. But while he's being scolded, I'm sitting right behind him, and he's shaking his head very noticeably. He never opened his mouth, but his body language does not agree with what the judge is saying. 2 days later, I'm on the jury pool. And the judge goes through, as he does every time he puts a new group up there, he goes through his 3 caveats. The only one that pertains right now is the fact that this man is defending himself against 17 felony accounts. The fact that he's defending himself against so many felonies, would that weigh one way or the other on your verdict? I didn't say a word. But as soon as he got done, he said, "Juror number 14, I can kind of see by your body language you don't agree with something." And I said, "That's true." He said, "Well, explain that." I've always found this interesting, that they let me talk for like 5 minutes. And I said, there's basically a couple things that have a problem here. But for your audience, I'm only going to talk about the one. He was shaking his head 2 days ago when you were admonishing him about he had to play by all the rules as a pro per. And I think I know what's going on. I think he wants to have an attorney, but he doesn't want to he wants the attorney as a counselor, not to take away his own right to make defense in the courtroom.
Right.
Well, okay, as soon as I got done, judge said a few more things, and he said, "I think we need a little recess." 15 minutes later, came back, and the judge said, 14, you can leave. Thank you very
Goodbye.
much. So I left. But I told you earlier, I'm curious. I'm retired at the time. I got more than enough time. I went back to court the next day and sat right behind the defendant. I wanted to know what's going on here. So at lunch, we went out for an opportunity to talk, and he told me I was exactly right. He went out with an attorney. The attorney and he did not really agree on how they could work, but they came back into the courtroom. The judge said to the attorney, "Are you able to work out anything?" And the attorney stood up and said, "Your Honor, based upon my time with the defendant, I would recommend a full psychiatric evaluation." Thank you, but I don't need you for a counselor, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So I started talking to him more, and he told me about Jack and Margie Flynn. Jack and Margie Flynn at the time were in Maine, I believe, and they were trying to help him defend himself using the rules. And you can imagine looking at over 20 years of possible incarceration and having a judge that's correcting you, a DA that's slamming you constantly. The guy did not do well.
Yeah.
And he was found guilty. I went back probably 6 different times. I never was stupid in going over and talking to the jurors, trying to sway. That put me in jail fast.
Sure.
Tampering with the jury. But I was there trying to give him some encouragement. But he was found guilty. But I got in touch with Jack and Margie Flynn. And they're the ones who turned me on to what is called the power of paper. You mentioned that the 5 rights protected by the First Amendment included the petition for redress of grievances. I like the word remedy better than redress. I have a grievance with you, corporate officer, police chief, sewer inspector, school board member. I have a problem with you. It's my responsibility to follow the rules of law, the rules of common law, common decency. I must notify you of the problem, or I notify you of the potential problem. And that's the beginning. And the main thing about the affidavit is it's always made out to a person. A lot of letters go to various government agencies. I don't know what happens to them. But I know when you send an affidavit by certified mail and somebody has to sign for it and then they see their name at the top with all that goes into the affidavit, they don't throw it away.
Right.
Because within a year or two, I got another rolling stop. And this time along the way, I make mistakes. I'm like a lot of human beings. Sometimes I just get mad and do things that are not wise. So I got another one of these rolling stops, and this time, by God, I'm not even going to pay it. I'm not going to pay it. Well, guess what happens? They suspend your license, and then you get another rolling stop, and this time, whoops, now it's a misdemeanor.
Yeah, criminal offense.
So I'm going to be in there defending myself against the DA who's over there, and he wants to get another win. Boy, I'll tell you, I'm going to hang this guy up. And we're going, she's calling the deputy in, and I told the judge, by the way, I asked for a bench trial. I didn't want to have a jury. I wanted to deal directly with one person, that judge.
Singular adjudicator, yeah.
So she was doing some things, and I'm not that smart at law, but I mean, goodness sakes, how long have you been practicing law? You can't do that. She brought me this evidence in the hallway before our case is being heard. I haven't had a chance to even look at this. And this could be evidence that I want to use as my defense. Well, the judge actually scolded her and said, he has a right to have exculpatory evidence given to him, not in the hallway, but weeks in advance.
Proper discovery protocol, yeah.
You know that. Well, she actually said, well, he could have asked for it. Boy, he got after her. It's not his job to ask for it. It's your job to get it to him. So later on, I made another objection, and he said, well, okay, I need to have you explain that. Basically, I was explaining why I didn't want to cross-examine the deputy. I wanted to directly examine the deputy. If I cross, I can only cross regarding what the DA has questioned. I want to do it direct so I can go into another area. Basically, my right to travel. Well, I said, explain that further. And I started to do it, and they said, stop. And these words I will never forget. Mr. Beck, you bring up some very valid points. Nevertheless, that's not why we're here today. You should have brought that up in a pre-trial motion. Pre-trial motion. Listeners, listen. It's called a pre-trial motion. Don't go to court and start arguing the Constitution when you're supposed to be there because they told you to be there. You need to argue it before, when we're here to discuss the Constitution. We're here to discuss the rule of law. We're here to talk about common law rights. Don't wait until you're talking about privileges and immunities as basically a second or third class American citizen. If you want to be treated special, then you need to know how to go into the courtroom and make that courtroom the people's courtroom. So that's what I learned that day. Never go in until you do your pre-trial. You would think I would have learned that. I got another rolling stop. But this time I was going to follow more of Margie and Jack's procedures. So I crafted a nice letter to the deputy and sent it certified mail. It wasn't an affidavit. Jack and Margie said, treat people the way you want to be treated. Don't treat people in anger. Settle down and give them the opportunity. Now, they knew that the deputy is not going to change his mind by way of a letter.
Sure.
But nevertheless, you do it. Now, this letter went certified mail, so the deputy had to sign for it. Now, I'm pretty sure he hardly gets any letters from people who he cites on the road, let alone one he has to sign for.
Right.
But after the 30 days went by, he didn't respond, so now I just turned it into an affidavit. Now, he has to sign for that again, and the affidavit, as did the notification letter, talks about his oath of office. You got an oath of office. This oath, not to the statutes. The oath of office is to the Constitution of the United States. And you're being paid to defend and promote it. And I spelled out in my affidavit the two things that he did wrong, which I'm willing to argue almost every traffic stop, these breaches of the common law and rules of law are done all the time.
Yeah.
And so a month or two went by and time to go to court. He didn't respond. And I walked in the courtroom with my witness. Never go to court without a witness. Don't trust that clerk over there, because she will bend the law. She will do things that the judge and the DA want, because they know you're pro per, you're not very smart, you're not very wise as to the rules. They'll play games with you. And I've had this happen to me once at that very trial where the judge told me that I had some good points. I'm not going to go into what they did to me, but it was not proper. And but the deputy came in. He looked at me. He gave a piece of paper to the bailiff. The bailiff gave it to the judge, and literally 2 minutes later, the judge said, "Mr. Beck, are you here?" "Yes, I'm here." "Mr. Beck, your case has been dropped. You may leave."
Love that.
Well, I had lost 5 before, and that was my first win. And I was shocked. I really thought I'm going to have to make a presentation, because I knew I hadn't done the pretrial thing. It's kind of hard to do pretrial motions in traffic court. It can be done, but it's not easy. But anyway, that was it. I won. Now I'm energized. This thing really works. So, COVID came along. Actually, in order, I have 5 victories. When Jack and Margie Flynn, I talked to them, they've been doing this for 6 decades. They have 10,000 victories. I thought, 10,000? That's a lot. Yeah, but I'm just one guy, and I've only been doing it for 6 years, 7 years, and I've got 5. So, hey, maybe they do have 10,000 wins. They certainly are dedicated to what they're doing. So I'm energized. I went down to my assemblywoman, and then I went over to my state senator, and I took witnesses with me. I took Shelley. Now, I took Shelley because Shelley was a victim of an automobile accident that took her husband's life. And when she went to court, the woman was found guilty who killed her husband, and the court assessed a fine to the woman that went to the government, and then the verdict was she was to pay Shelley $2 a month for the rest of her life. $2 a month. It's not going to help Shelley much at all. So it's supposed to teach that woman a lesson. Well, after 6 months, she forgot the lesson entirely. She didn't even send the $2 anymore.
Sure.
So this just set me off even more. So I went to the assemblywoman and the senator, and I always begin with this question. According to the Declaration of Independence, what is the purpose of government? And both of them said the same thing. Now, the assemblywoman's only been there for 6 months. The senator's been there for 6 years. And neither one of them could tell me why you're there. You're not just going there to get a paycheck. You're supposed to know why you're there. I asked them, do you know these words? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness? Well, of course. Now, they always say the purpose of government is to protect the people. I tell them that's not right. Not according to the Declaration of Independence. Because after those choice words comes this statement, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Sabrina, Senator, your job in Sacramento is to secure my rights. And then I went on to talk about how I wouldn't mind paying traffic tickets if, say, 80% of it went to people like Shelley.
Sure.
Who's an actual victim of careless driving. But that's not what's happening. That money is being eaten up in various levels of government.
Mostly wasteful, yeah.
Yeah. So I went into her and I told her her job. 6 months later, she's sponsoring a bill that would make every priest, every pastor in California a felon. For doing what? Simply offering counsel to someone who might be homosexual, or somebody might have the questions of sexual dysphoria, and nobody's forcing that person in to listen to a priest or pastor. They're coming voluntarily. But according to this law, this statute that they're trying to pass, they would be subject to felony indictment for just offering their opinion. Well, we sent these people an affidavit. Well, the statute had passed the Assembly. It had passed the Senate. They were coming together for reconciliation, and we hit them. Now, I hit them with an affidavit. Some other people did affidavits. Other people just sent letters in. But they decided to pull the statute. I didn't really count that as a victory. But 6 months later, when they came out with a resolution, not a statute, just a resolution, basically stating to all the people, don't give that kind of counsel to people who are confused. It might lead to suicide. My assemblywoman didn't even sponsor. She sponsored the statute, but she didn't sponsor the resolution. Okay, now I'm willing to accept it as a victory. Now, I have, let's see, 2 situations with COVID. Number one thing about California, people, I hope they understand this. California has 58 counties. Each one of those counties has a sheriff. Over 40 of those sheriffs really don't agree with much coming out of Sacramento. They really don't like our governor very much. So when the governor says, I'm mandating across the state social distancing, where people have to wear masks, we want all these restaurants closed, our sheriff, like many sheriffs, said, you want me to go into these churches on Sunday and count heads? That's not going to happen. And I'm not even going to go around and tell the restaurants they have to close. However, we did have a chief medical officer in our county who decided that was his job, to enforce the mandate. So he's going around and getting a lot of restaurants to close up, some of which never reopened. And, well, a lot of this is Providence. I'm just curious. I look up things and I realize there's a guy out on the East Coast named David Martin, and he's been watching Fauci for over 2 decades. And he's put together what is called the Fauci dossier. And in order to have a mandate to become a law, there's certain procedures that have to be followed. When government passes a statute, it turns it over to the bureaucrats, and the bureaucrats come up with regulations. They're in the Code of Federal Regulations. Forgot the citing on this one, but basically it requires an independent review board to be created, made up of people who have no monetary value in the outcome. We never did that. We never did that in California. I don't think it was done anywhere in the country.
Probably not, no.
But we put that in the affidavit to the chief medical officer. Now, it's one thing for me to say, you're violating my rights. It's even better when you can say, you're violating federal laws. Okay, we sent it off to the chief medical officer. He didn't answer. We didn't expect him to. But then we followed Margie and Jack's standard operating procedures. Put the affidavit into another letter with an affidavit to the board of supervisors. There's 5 of the supervisors. We did it in each one. They got it. And we're basically saying, hey, do you guys know you've got this hireling down here who's violating federal laws? You're responsible for him. You need to deal with him. Otherwise, you, Ken Jeffries, are responsible. Now, I never got a phone call from my supervisor except after that. When I sent him my affidavit, I got a phone call from him. He was not happy.
I'm sure.
What I was putting in that affidavit. Well, we didn't get along very well that day. Since then, we get along quite well because he's leaving office. He's going to move to Idaho. He'll take another California pension and go live in Idaho. So we sent the affidavit to the supervisors, and I'm waiting, wonder what's going to happen. Oh my gosh, it's in the newspaper. They're having a special meeting with the chief medical officer. On Friday, out comes the news. Chief medical officer, no longer temporary, he is now permanent. Well, that's not what I wanted. I'm kind of like crushed. I thought, I don't understand how that happened. Monday, chief medical officer resigns.
Damn.
I don't understand that. It took me a while to figure it out.
Just the weekend? He made it one weekend.
Oh, I get it. They want him to resign. He wants a pension. If he's temporary, he can't get a pension. So they make him permanent. Now he's got his pension. He goes and lives in Australia. This happens constantly.
Yeah.
The way you get rid of a scandal, you have him resign and you pay him some money. It happens constantly. And one of the things that we hope to do in our county is, you do that again, we're coming after you guys. And quite frankly, we're even looking at who's the attorney that's representing the person who's threatening to sue our county DA or our county sheriff. Who's the lawyer behind that ambulance chaser trying to make a bundle of money from the taxpayers? Because that lawyer took an oath of office also, not to undermine the Constitution. If my sheriff and my DA are doing their job and they're being sued over here for harassment, all he's doing is doing his job. But our county supervisors listen to their attorneys, and their attorneys say, hey, if you fight it in a liberal court down in LA, you're going to have to pay twice as much. So just pay the person, they'll go away.
Yeah.
This is serious bad stuff. People are not being held accountable for their actions. So there's I'm talking about COVID. There's one COVID. Here's a second one. I'm going into Best Buy and they say I have to wear a mask. I said, well, I don't wear a mask. Yeah, we have a law. It's not a law. It's a mandate. Do you understand that? The mandates aren't law. And I have a right to go into your store and not have to wear a mask. Oh, but it's a mandate. Okay. I don't like making scenes. I just use paper.
Yeah.
So this time I had to go to Glendale because now I'm dealing with a corporation. Corporation has certain servicing agents. So I had to drive down to Glendale and deliver my paperwork, which then went to Minneapolis and basically gave them 30 days to respond. They chose not to, of course. So then I filed a case in small claims court. Small claims court, $50 to file. Only $50 to file. And they have to show up. And they did show up. And again, the judge that I'm dealing with, I've never seen her before in my life. She's a commissioner. She's not even really a judge. And she doesn't understand the law very well. I put in my affidavits as proof, and that's one of the rules of law, of common law, is that if I send you an affidavit that's notarized and it's created according to valid law, evidence, fact, and truth, and you don't rebut it, then I can use it in court against you. Well, I put that into the court. I even put in, I wanted to have a pretrial motion. And I'm waiting. Gosh, now it's the day of the hearing, and in the morning, they sent me an email saying that my movement for having a pretrial motion had been not accepted. So I'm going to have to just go to court. Now, I learned a lesson right there. If I ever do this again, I put my pretrial motion in there. After a week or so, they haven't responded to it. It's getting within a week of the court date. Then I'm going to go in and make a special appearance. I'm going to have my pretrial motion heard. So that's what I learned. It's a chess game, and as a pro per, you're not going to get any help from the government. What we need is pro pers helping pro pers so that we don't make these mistakes. Nevertheless, I went to court. I referenced the affidavits, and she said I haven't seen them. Well, you haven't even seen my affidavits. They've been in there for 4 weeks. So I handed the affidavit to the bailiff. The bailiff gave it to the commissioner. The commissioner looked it over, perused it, did not read it, gave it back to the bailiff, gave it to me. She'd already made up her mind what she's going to do. When she asked the manager from Best Buy to speak, I objected right away. I said, his company's already had 2 opportunities to rebut my affidavits. He's chosen to remain silent, therefore he has no right to even open up his mouth in your courtroom. But she didn't like me telling her the law, and she just kind of ran over me. But that's all right, because I learned. I learned by doing. Yeah, people say, well, did you win? They had to show up. If they had to show up for me, and then you did it also, they have to show up for you, and for you, and for you. They're not going to win. They're going to give. They'll quit. They'll see that the law is really on our side, and they're going to capitulate. But the commissioner she must have ran right to her office before the mail went out, because that was on Wednesday. On Friday, I got the letter saying that she had ruled against me. Well, I wasn't surprised by this. I would have been shocked if she'd had ruled in my favor. So what I did is I filed a complaint with the county grand jury. I filed a complaint with the judicial board. I also filed an appeal, but the appeal ended up at her desk, so she just simply reaffirmed her position. And then the last thing I did is I found her home mailing address, and I sent her an affidavit giving her 30 days to rebut, and basically saying, hey, if you don't rebut this, this is grounds for me to recuse you from any future case you ever sit before, because you're violating your oath of office. I'm telling you in the affidavit, you have a responsibility to rebut this. Everything in it can be used against you in any court in America, and that includes your court. I will not allow you to sit on any cases, nor would I recommend any of my friends to allow you, because my affidavit works for him also. You are unfit to sit as a commissioner. So, the nice thing about California, you can sue for discrimination in small claims court. And I wasn't after money. I simply wanted them to stop making me wear a mask in their store. Now, 4 years later, most of us think that masking stuff was not very helpful, or might have even been detrimental in some cases. And I hope we learned our lesson, because if we have another scare, I think a lot of Americans are not going to be so easily fooled. So, those are my two situations. I have one more, maybe my best.
Coup de grace.
2002. I'm in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, visiting my mother. And along the area of traffic, but again, this is critically important, no victim, no crime. I have never, ever been in court where I victimized somebody. But I did something in South Dakota that took up to the misdemeanor level. It still had to do with traffic, but it's now a misdemeanor. So I got cuffed, taken to the police station, and they took my picture, and I paid them $100 bail, and then I realized, oh boy, they want me to be in court on Tuesday, my flight's Sunday. It's a misdemeanor, and I'm rational. I didn't hurt anybody. I'm not messing my life up for something like this. So I got on the airplane, and 15 years later, I went to get a gun, and there was a bench warrant.
In Idaho.
I didn't show up for court, so they put a bench warrant on me. Well, a few more years went by. I didn't really think too much about it because I'm a misdemeanor in South Dakota. They're not going to extradite me. But then Margie and Jack's points kept rattling me. I thought, you know what? I wasn't a victim. There was no victim. So technically there's no crime. That's one of the rules of common law. So I put that in an affidavit along with what I thought were some pretty good court decisions in my favor, and I sent it to the presiding judge of the county. Certified mail, no response. Here we go. Affidavit in the letter with another affidavit. This one's made out to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the state of South Dakota. 2 months later, bench warrant gone. A bench warrant has been sitting there for 20 years, gone. I count that as probably my highest victory.
Yeah.
And it was all through the mail. I didn't have to go to court. I think in a lot of cases, like traffic, if you know how to do it properly, you don't have to pay the fine, and you don't have to go to court. Right now, I know I don't have to pay the fine. I'm not so sure about don't have to go to court. Quite frankly, I'd probably have to get another ticket in order to test that. And it's not likely I'm going to get another ticket because I told you earlier, notify if you think there's a potential problem. So I don't like to spend a lot of time talking about traffic. For me, traffic is like kindergarten law. It's really, really basic and simple. But I know that what the police officer did in my case, remember, I don't speed and I don't drink, so I'm not a threat to anybody out there. Of course, I could make mistakes, so I have insurance. I have a driver's license because it's a great way to ID. People want to ID, they want to see your driver's license. So, okay, there it is. But technically, I'm not driving. Technically, I'm traveling. And traveling is one of those 10th Amendment rights, or 9th Amendment rights. It's not stated, but we have plenty of court cases that defend that right. So I put an affidavit to my police chief, to the highway patrol, and to the deputy, to the sheriff, basically spelling out the reasons why I should not be stopped when I'm not threatening anybody, when there's no verifiable complaint. Here's a rule of law. There must be a verifiable complaint. Now, I've been in court and I've argued that, and the judge correctly said to me, the complaint filed by the police officer is a verifiable complaint. She's absolutely right because I'm in her jurisdiction. I'm in what is called statutory jurisdiction. Technically, there's no such thing as statutory jurisdiction, but admiralty, maritime, commerce law, all that stuff basically is statutory law. They pass a statute. The statute's not constitutional, so it remains a statute, so it's part of statutory law. And if you don't object to their jurisdiction, then you're under that law. However, if you don't want to be under that law, then you have to do certain things to give your adversary proper notice. So I put an affidavit to each of those 3 law enforcement agencies, and wouldn't you know it, within 1 year, I have contact with all 3. The first one, I'm sitting out in front of a house waiting for my wife who's giving a piano lesson. And I'm dozing and somebody's knocking on my window. It's a police officer. What are you doing here? I'm waiting for what's her name? Well, you're rather rude, but nevertheless, I'm not going to argue with you. My wife's name's Elizabeth. I need to see your driver's license. Do you know you're improperly parked? No, what's wrong? It's your front wheels are on the red. Oh, I'll be happy to move them back. Give me your driver's license. Now, she went back and now, I've already put my affidavit in there. And I'm spelling out to them my right to travel. And as long as I'm not, some people come back and they say, well, Mr. Beck, you think you're above the law. I'm not above the common law. I have a responsibility to obey all traffic laws that might put other people at risk. If there's a stop sign and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm probably not going to come to a stop. If there's a stop sign and the people coming into that intersection have the right of way, I will come to a total stop. Because that's the rules of the law, of the road. I'll follow those, quite frankly, because I don't want to have an accident. It's my own self-interest that largely
self-preservation.
That's what I'm doing out here. And that's what's guiding you and you and you. And that's why we don't have so many accidents. because we don't want to have accidents. So she came back and she said, you're free to go. Have a nice day. Oh, by the way, your tags are 16 months overdue. You might want to renew them. Yeah, I might want to renew them, but I might not want to renew them. The point is, normally 16 months overdue on your tags, you're going to have problems.
Yeah.
And she said, go ahead, you have a nice day. Within a month, I'm traveling down this road. I'm in the left turn lane, stop light. My gosh, I need to take a right turn here. I need to go through 4 lanes of traffic and go that way. And so I put on my right turn blinker and I look behind me and, oh my gosh, it's a sheriff, deputy. Now he's in the right lane to my right. He's just going to go straight through. I'll just wait for him to go through and then I'll do what I want to do. He comes in right behind me. Oh boy. Now he's got plenty of time to run my plates. So I said, I'm going to do a left turn. I'll go down one street, very obscure street. I'll take a left and get rid of him. I went, took a left, and he followed me right down the road. He went 2 blocks, stopped in the middle of the road, and turned around and went away. He ran my plates. He found out there's something in there that says, don't touch this guy. Don't stop him. Don't cite him. Because, I don't ever want police officers in a position of having to stop me because I'm a threat to somebody. I'd never drive that way, which I should say travel that way. I never had speeding ticket. In 37 years out here, I've never had one speeding ticket because I don't speed. I don't think speeding is smart. So that was a deputy. A week later, I have a highway patrolman right behind me. Now, these guys are really good at giving out tickets. They're just really good at it.
It's almost like it's most of their job, yeah.
So there I am. He was sitting at a stoplight for, 20 seconds or so. He's running my plates for sure. And he just drove on by as well. Okay, maybe he had something more important to do. Maybe the deputy sheriff got a phone call and suddenly had to leave me instead of giving me a ticket. I don't know. They will never tell you why you win. You just win. And that's all that really matters.
Yeah.
I'm doing the right thing. As I say often to people, I live my life by certain precepts, and one of them is this. What would the world be like if everybody's doing what I'm doing? I think the world would be a lot better off if more people understood what the law was and cared enough to defend the greatest country that has ever existed on this planet. This is what I call American exceptionalism. It has nothing to do with the American people per se. We are lazy and cowardly as much as any other country in the world. But the founding fathers, through their wisdom, gave us a form of government not comparable to any other before or since. And we have a moral responsibility to defend this country from those who would want to take it all away from us. And that's what I do. And that's why I'm on this podcast. I want to quote something from the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson writing, he, speaking of the king, he has combined with others, here speaking of Parliament and the colonial governors, he has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution. Not talking about the United States Constitution, which didn't come till 11 years later. It's talking about the common law of England. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to acts of pretended legislation. Pretended legislation is color of law. It's statutes that are not constitutional. It's our responsibility to fight every last one of them. Here again, I just do my life, and nice things happen to me. I met recently a guy out of Massachusetts. He's doing the same thing, only he's up the ante in Massachusetts. He's got a powerful group of people, and they're watching every law, every statute that Massachusetts legislature was trying to pass. And when they put it into committee and they start looking at it, they start looking and saying, that's not constitutional. Bingo, I'll go about 40 notifications to the author of that bill that what you're trying to do is contrary to your oath to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Maryland. Well, what happened was recently leaders of the legislature in Massachusetts were bemoaning the fact that this was the least progressive session of the legislature in their memory. They weren't able to pass nearly as many laws or statutes because of, well, I don't know, maybe it's because of, I don't know, maybe it's because of those notifications that were coming in. What we need in this country, remember Valley Forge, troops freezing, losing fingers and toes to frostbite, while other Americans were selling crops and produce to the British who were hunkered down in Philadelphia. How do you think the Americans standing with Washington felt about the majority of the Americans who were doing nothing? Thank God for the ones that did. And what we're talking about right now, I'm talking about 3-5%, maybe less. I live in a county of 3.5 million people. Hey, 300,000 people? That's a small percentage. 30,000 is even less. 3,000? Hey, I'm only looking for 300. 300 people that will do what I do in this county. And if you're in a smaller county, maybe you only need 20 people. To learn how to do this and to go from that on to learning about tactical civics. And I'm just going to mention tacticalcivics.com. Oh, before I do that, I want to say this. The free gift that I'm going to give you is going to be an actual affidavit. The critical important first paragraph, the critically important last paragraph. The body changes, but you need that first and last paragraph in order to have effective affidavits, in my opinion. So back to what I was talking about. Tactical Civics has put together a tremendous research project of over 80,000 hours, 44 individuals over the course of 15 years, researching the history of the United States and how the United States operated up until the Civil War, when everything changed. This book has been brought back into print. It's called The People's Panel, the Grand Jury in the United States from 1634 to 1941. I read this and I thought, oh my gosh, it's true. We had a period of time in the United States where the people convened grand juries in order to bird dog government. Our grand juries have been taken over by government, and government might do a good job of looking at the evidence regarding some guy who's running a scam, but they don't do a very good job of looking at their own scams. We, the people, have to have the ability to call the supervisor into our meeting and swear him under oath and hold him accountable to perjury. We can call the sheriff in. We can call the mayor in. We can call in any government official, and we can also subpoena witnesses. That you're a citizen, you've got information that we want, and you need to be down here. That's how they got rid of Boss Tweed in New York City. Government couldn't get rid of him. The People's Panel got him out. So what I do and what I train people to do regarding affidavits is part of the solution. The real solution is what Tactical Civics has accomplished over the last 15 years. Their goal is to set up organizations in every county in America and teach the American people, the ones that want to learn, how to control government, how to give a rebirth of liberty in our country. Because we have to learn how to fight jurisdiction. When you get something from the government that's got your name in all caps, you have just been reduced to a servant. You can look that up in Black's Law Dictionary. Capitis something maxima. Basically, capital letters, you're a servant. Small caps, capitals and small letters, you've got much more rights. But if you're all caps, you got privileges and immunities. And if you start arguing constitutional rights in their courtroom, they might listen to you, or they might get mad right away and tell you, you keep talking like that, you'll be held in contempt. And Americans walk away saying, my God, the courts are corrupt. No, not necessarily. If you're playing according to their rules, and you don't like the rules, don't say they're corrupt. You should have learned the proper rules. It took me 40 years to learn. And now I'm trying to teach people who are 16 years old. You don't have to play by those rules. You can play by these rules. But I'm going to tell you something. Those rules also have responsibilities. And people who want to have rights and don't want to have responsibilities, they're of no value to us.
Yeah, that you can't do that.
Those are the people who just want something. This country is about giving something. Caring about your neighbors. I had a conversation once with a police officer. I said, simply walking down the street, because we were talking about common law, and I said, you're walking down the street, and you look across the street, and there's two people mugging a woman. What would you do? Cop says, knowing what I know about the law. Now, he's thinking statutory law, I guess. Because he says, according to what I know about this law, I would just keep walking. Really? Let me change the story just a little bit. That woman over there is your mother. Now what are you going to do? Well, that changes everything. I said, let me tell you, that's common law. See, over the last 4 years, you've heard lots about standing. Well, you can't sue, you don't have standing. You don't have standing. You don't have standing. You weren't hurt. That's true. Under statutory jurisdiction, I don't have standing. Under common law jurisdiction, I do have standing. And I'll sue you in court in behalf of the person that you molested. I'll just be part of a group of people that do it. Because I'm not after any money. I'm after you stop doing what you're doing to that person over there. We'll hold you accountable for it.
This has been the free first half of the TLB Pod. For additional content from this episode and other episodes, please visit Patreon at the TLB Pod. Literally no one cares. Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva. When will this end? Thank you for listening. Now get back to work. Move it along, buddy.